It's time for the Douglas Coleman Show. Mr. Smooth and Savvy is joined by guests from all walks of life, from the entertainment industry to authors to political and social commentators, the famous and not so famous, the controversial and the light and fluffy. We have it all. Now, here's Douglas Coleman.
Hello there. Hello there. Hello, baby. For those of you that are old enough to remember that one, that was a guy named J.P. Richardson Jr., a.k.a. the Big Bopper. He had a hit called Chantilly Lace back in the 1950s, and he was more notably known as one of the three musicians killed in a tragic plane crash in Iowa in 1959, along with Ritchie Valens and Buddy Holly. And it was mentioned in a song by Don McLean many years later, and he referenced it as the day the music died. It was one of the sadder days in rock and roll history, that's for sure. Anyways, this is Douglas Coleman. How are you? Welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show. We are very much alive and still kicking. We've got Matt Lambros and Bill March today for our interviews. Matt is an architectural photographer who has been documenting the decay of America's abandoned theaters in the hopes of shedding light on these forgotten buildings and the efforts to repurpose them. We get into an interesting conversation about how one has been turned into a dim sum restaurant in Boston, which I've been to. He's got a couple of books out. After the Final Curtain is one. His second book is called King's Theater, The Rise, Fall, and Rebirth of Brooklyn's Wonder Theater. He will be up first, followed by Bill March. Bill March is a musician. We're going to be playing one of Bill's tracks called Nobody Knows, and we'll play that before his interview. Before we get to the interviews, we have our current complete radio promotional playlist. This week is a track called Vegas by George Hendrickson. And this track was produced by Stuart Epps, who has been on the show before, and he's also produced some of my music. So you know it's good if Stuart produced it. For more information about George, please go to our website, douglascolemanshow.com, and click on the featured artist link. And there you will find information on George and all the other artists that we have featured as part of our complete radio promotional package. Just a quick update. We have eliminated our Patreon page because we had it linked up to buying sponsorship packages, and it was a little complicated and we weren't getting anybody signing up. So we decided to eliminate that page in favor of, if you are interested in being a sponsor on the Douglas Coleman Show, please contact us directly at douglascolemanshow@gmail.com, and we can give you the sponsorship rates. They're very reasonable. $40 a month will get your ad played on our show, which actually plays like 28 times a week. It's the same as the radio promotional package, except instead of promoting a track, we're promoting your product via an audio ad. So it's a very good deal. Please contact us, douglascolemanshow@gmail.com, and we'll give you all the details. So with that, here is Vegas by George Hendrickson, followed by interviews with Matt Lambros and Bill March.
And I suppose that's how it's got to to be. One day you're chained and finally find you're free. Some people say it's written in the stars, like when you know your life can fall apart. Don't take it to your heart, it's gonna take some time to see. There's light out in Vegas, there's much in Japan, there's thousands of faces and millions of hands. Now smile on the day when you think you're alone. You count all the faces and you count on your own. There's much in Japan, there's thousands of faces and millions of hands. Now smile on the day when you think you're alone. You count all the faces and you count on your own. There's life out in Vegas, there's much in Japan, there's thousands of faces and millions of hands. Now smile on the day when you think you're alone. You count all the faces and you count on your own.
Hi, this is John Morgan, production supervisor for DJC Productions, and you're listening to The Douglas Coleman Show.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Matt Lambros. Hi, Matt. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing pretty well. How about you?
I'm doing good. You're from Boston?
Sort of. I was born in Boston, raised in New York, went to college in Boston, moved back to New York, and now I'm back in Boston.
You're from Boston. Okay, that's good. I'm originally from Boston, spent most of my life there. I moved from Boston in 2005 and live in Las Vegas now. I don't miss the New England winter, but, you know, when it's 112 degrees in Vegas in the summertime, I do kind of miss it. I kind of miss the snow and the cold and
Yeah, I hear you there. I'm not a huge fan of winter, but my wife loves it, so here we are. I'm trying to talk her out of moving us to Maine.
Oh, well, that's even colder.
Where it's even I know.
Yeah, although Maine's very beautiful, though. I mean, I love Maine, but
it's,
you know.
Yeah, it's gorgeous up there, and you know, it's as a photographer, there's so many beautiful landscapes to shoot. So it's tempting, but the winter aspect of it is, yeah.
Yeah. The best way to live in New England is to leave on New Year's Day. You know, Thanksgiving and Christmas is real cool there. It's, you know, because it's very festive. New England has a lot of culture still. On New Year's Day, get on a plane and go to Florida, go to Vegas, go to California, wherever, you know, and then come back April 15th. You know, that you just skip that brutal period, and then you get the seasons again, you know?
Yeah, that's actually what my grandparents did for a while. They flew to Florida for 3 months and came back.
Yeah, that's it. All right, well, let's talk about you. You're a photographer, and you're taking pictures of abandoned buildings, specifically abandoned theaters. How did you get involved with that? What is your fascination with abandoned theaters?
Well, abandoned theaters kind of came from... I can't talk about that without talking about the other abandoned buildings first.
Okay.
Because it kind of was sort of sharp. I kind of sharpened my focus to focus on one type of building. When I was very young, my parents got divorced, and my grandmother used to watch me and my brother. And she got this from her father. She was a very curious woman. If she saw a barn, like, we driving down the street and you see an old dilapidated barn, most people go, oh, look, or there's a barn over there, or don't notice it. My grandmother would pull over and go inside. So that was something I did when I was a kid. So I thought everyone was doing that. I just thought it was a thing that people did. Like, hey, let's go in this old abandoned building, And that kind of stuck with me. And like my favorite movies growing up were always ones that had like some sort of dilapidated like future dystopian setting, or were about like ancient ruins. So I wanted to explore sort of modern ancient ruins, or modern ruins really. And I started photographing or documenting, really, because it was with a video camera at first, abandoned mental hospitals.
Oh, funny you should say that. I was gonna ask you that question, but go ahead. We'll get back to that. And I was researching the history of those and the history of the American mental health system, and it's obviously very depressing, and there were a lot of people out there doing it much better than I was. And so I decided I kind of got burnt out on it and decided I wanted to find keep the abandoned theme, but find a place where people went to have fun, like that was gone. And I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. I never had gone to a film in an old movie theater, like a single screen theater. It was always multiplexes. Okay.
And I was hanging out with some friends. We went to see a movie in Manhattan, in the Village East Cinemas, which was an old Yiddish theater that became a movie theater. And I just remember looking around at the architecture and thinking, this is gorgeous. I can't believe they're showing movies in this thing. I thought it was like a legitimate playhouse. So that got the bug in my head. What if there are abandoned theaters like this out there? And I found one not too far from my apartment. It was the King's Theater in Brooklyn. And I started photographing it. And that was about 10 years ago. And now that's pretty much all I do is shoot mostly abandoned theaters, but some active ones now. Yeah.
I'm probably about 10 years older than you because I grew up in the late 70s into the 80s. And the theater district in Boston, which used to be called the Combat Zone, I don't know if it's still called that now, but that's a very interesting history because those theaters were built, most of them were built in the 1800s, and they were live shows, right? Then when film came out, they all converted to film, and they were all movie theaters. But they kept the same building and all the old facades and the frescoes on the walls. I mean, it's just unbelievable places. During the 1960s and early 70s, most of them, because people moved to the suburbs, a lot of those theaters turned into porno houses, and they started showing porno films during the 60s and 70s. Then when VHS came out, people didn't want to go to a theater to watch porno movies. They could go take them home, and watch them in private. So those theaters really sort of died. And there was a point where all of those theaters on Washington Street were just empty and just like you said, in decay, complete dilapidation. About 8-9 years after that, Chinatown, which is right next door to the Combat Zone area, the Chinese started to move into that area and buy up those theaters very cheap. I went with a friend of mine, Chinese friend, immigrant, came to the United States. He took me to one of those theaters, and I said, well, what's in there? And he says, no, it's all different now. They turned it into a dim sum restaurant. And what they did was they just ripped out all the chairs, all the seats, leveled the floor, made the stage, put a wall up, put the kitchen behind the wall, and had a couple of ramps coming down with the carts, and put tables all on there. This thing seated 700 people. And we went in there on a Sunday to eat, and it was just unbelievable. The whole theater looked like it was falling down, but they turned it into a dim sum restaurant. And I thought, that is so incredibly innovative, because I don't think anyone in America would think to take an old theater like that and turn it into a restaurant. Now, I don't know if it's still there. That was like 2002, 2003.
It's still there.
Is it still there, the dim sum place? Yeah?
Mm-hmm. And they've painted it, so it doesn't look like it's falling down anymore.
You know the one I'm talking about, then?
I do.
Okay.
I do, yep.
So I thought that was so cool.
Washington Street.
On Washington Street, right. Mm-hmm. Right up the street from that is the Boston Opera House, which I went to a couple of concerts at. And what has happened with that place? Have they done anything with that? Because that was another one of those built in the 1800s plays.
I believe that was renovated in 2004. I know it's still open.
And it's still an opera house? They still do concerts and things there?
Yeah. Yeah. There's another one. Emerson just took over one, or they had it for a while, and they were going to turn it into, I think, like a cafeteria or so. They were going to do something with it, and there was a big outcry, and it ended up getting a full restoration. I think it was the Paramount.
Oh, okay. All right.
And yeah, that's still there too. But what I had always heard is that the original Boston Theater District is actually where Government Center is now, and they demolished it all in the '60s to build that building. It was the smaller theaters were over there, and the big ones were in the combat zone.
Oh, okay.
And they wiped out all the small theaters in the '60s.
Yeah, well, that's possible. But it was really interesting to me to go to the Opera House. I went to see Miles Davis just before he died, like a year before he died. And at that point, the place was in real decay, but you could still kind of see the charm of it. Like when you came into the lobby, there was a 8-foot fireplace right in the middle of the lobby, and all the marble in the bathrooms and stuff. And it was incredible how they built things back then. They were. Go ahead. They
were designed to sort of, like, every aspect of these places was designed to entertain you, and to make you feel like you were royalty. Like the theaters would have, they had ushers with white gloves who would show you to your seats.
Right. Yeah.
It was really, even some of them were designed in a way that, just in case the show was sold out and you were waiting to get into the next show, you'd be able to look around and see the architecture and not be, annoyed that you were sitting in a line for a little bit. And one of the famous quotes by one of the guys, Marcus Lowe, who was the founder of the Lowe's Corporation, which is now part of AMC, was, "We don't sell tickets to movies, we sell tickets to theaters." People would go to, people in neighborhoods would go to a specific theater because that was the one they liked. That was the one they'd go see movies at. They liked, it was a little different back then.
Yeah, somehow, going now, like, to a Cineplex, there's no charm about a Cineplex at all. There really isn't. Although there are some of them that are doing like this VIP thing where you can get a great big lounge chair and they'll bring the popcorn to your seat and stuff like that. I've seen some of those, though. That's not bad. That's an attempt to make it more enjoyable.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a, because I think the movie theater industry is having a bit of a crisis at the moment with, Netflix and all the streaming services out there. And I know that there was a call to try to get day and date releases on streaming services or on demand, and to try to bypass the movie theaters altogether. So they're trying to figure out ways to make it so it's better to go to see a movie at a movie theater than it is just to see it on your big screen TV. So yeah, they're introducing, like reclining chairs and dinner that you can order from your seat, which is funny because it's kind of like almost going back to the like treat you like royalty aspect to try to draw people back in.
Yeah. Well, it was interesting to see old photos of the theater district and things when they were, like from the late 1800s, when the carriages would pull up with the horses and people would get out dressed in, the men in top hats and tails and the women in these beautiful dresses. And I mean, that was their night out, So the place had to be so amazingly opulent. I also got a kick out of some of the old theaters because it was before electricity, so they had to do the whole thing in candles. It's no wonder so many burned down.
Oh, yeah.
You know, with a bazillion candles going. How many candles do you need to light up a theater on stage and to have it so people can see God? Just unimaginable to me.
I would assume that a lot of it was gas-powered in the late 1800s. And even then, though, that would still...
Yeah, they did have gas jets, by that point. Yeah, that's true. I want to go back to the psychiatric hospitals. It was so funny you said that, because that's something that I've always had a fascination with. Anytime anybody posts pictures on YouTube of abandoned psychiatric hospitals, I'm always right there looking at them. There's something incredibly creepy about them. I think any of those movies that have been made about psychiatric hospitals back in the day are just so scary, because it was true. That's it's very sad. It's a very sad history, but it was true what they did to these people. You know, drilling holes in their head and electroshock therapies and ice water therapy. And the worst one to me was the insulin shock comas that they used to put people into. Just unbelievable. So you see these pictures of these places, and it just gives you the creeps. But it's one of those things like a car accident where you can't turn away. For me, I just cannot turn away. I just got to look at all these pictures. So was that kind of the same with you as you started with that? Yeah?
Yeah, it was sort of... I always loved ghost stories, too, growing up. And it was sort of that, like, interest in that. I wanted to find ghosts with a friend of mine. We were looking to become paranormal investigators. We wanted to look for the supernatural and find evidence of it, and quickly became skeptics very quickly after a couple months of trying things and realizing, oh, okay, none of this is real. And really, I visited abandoned hospitals or asylums up and down the East Coast, and really, that they're only. I didn't find them creepy. I found them sad, and it was really because I knew what had happened to people there, and that was how the buildings made me feel. Was just like an overwhelming sadness, just like so many people were abused, and in some cases they were abused with good intentions. People thought that the practices they were doing, like the shock treatments and everything, were helping these people.
Right.
But yeah, the buildings and the way they decay is very. I mean, that is very spooky as well, like creepy. And you do run into people inside them. Sometimes it's homeless people have made like camps inside, or other people exploring. So when you're walking through a building and you do hear footsteps and you're with everyone you came with, it can get a little hairy.
Well, it's also, I think there are spirits in those kind of buildings, because certainly a lot of people died in there over the years. And people died under all kinds of horrendous circumstances. And, if there's any truth to the idea that your spirit leaves the body, and if you don't leave when you're, these are all different philosophies of different religions, Eastern and Western. And if you don't leave at a point where you're in peace with yourself, if you die under some horrific conditions, that your soul is restless and comes back, and all this kind of stuff. So I can't help but believe that anybody who died in one of those places died peacefully. So it's sort of like I hate to use the word garbage dump, but it's like a big dumping ground for very restless souls that have not left this world, peacefully.
I mean, I agree. If there are, if there are ghosts, if there is the paranormal, yeah, these places would be where they would show up, which is kind of why I don't really think there is, or haven't really seen enough evidence that proves to me that it is, having visited 40 or 50 of these, and sometimes at night. for a while, since you're from the Boston area, are you familiar with Danvers State Hospital?
Oh, yeah. No, sure.
Yeah, we would, like my friends and I, when I was in college, would go up there 3 nights a week. And it ended up just becoming like a hangout spot for us.
Wow.
But we were in the building, going through trying to find every single like nook and like going in every corridor, just looking and exploring, and nothing happened. So it could just be, if you're not looking for it, or you don't, you're not going to see it, kind of thing, or I'm not as open to it, so nothing happened to me.
Well, I think ghosts don't necessarily appear on cue either. They'll sort of, if they're going to come out, they come out when they want. I guess the one that's still going is Bridgewater State. Yeah.
Yeah, that's still there.
That's still there.
It's a prison though.
It's not. I thought it was a mental hospital, or is it both?
I'm not familiar, as familiar as I should be with it. I believe it was a mental hospital that they closed the mental hospital portion of it, and they have a prison on the grounds, and the prison is what's still open.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So, since you asked about that, I'm assuming you've seen the movie Titicut Follies.
The movie what?
Titicut Follies.
No, I have not. I haven't even heard of it.
There is a movie about the mental health system, called Titicut Follies.
How do you spell
that? Titicut, and it was directed by Frederick Weissman, and it was about the inmates at Bridgewater.
Ah, okay. I'm gonna have to. How old is the movie?
50 years, maybe.
Oh, old. Okay.
Yeah. It's old, so it's a lot of the stuff that you described of happening at these hospitals, you see in that.
It was going on, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, they literally show it.
They show it, yeah, okay. I'll look that up. Okay, so you must have taken over the years lots and lots of photographs. You have books out, I assume, yeah?
I do. I have 2 books. One is called After the Final Curtain, The Fall of the American Movie Theater. And that was my first book. My second, I was able to document the restoration and reopening of the first theater that I photographed, the King's Theater in Brooklyn. And so my book on that is The King's Theater, The Rise, Fall, and Rebirth of Brooklyn's Wonder Theater. And then on November 5th, my third book comes out, which is a follow-up to my first book. It is After the Final Curtain, America's Abandoned Theaters. And it's 20 theaters across the country that are closed, and it talks about their story, and yeah.
You're also a longtime member of the Theater Historical Society of America. Now, is that society working to try to preserve and restore all these old theaters? Is that kind of the point, or no?
It's more... I'm actually a board member of the Theater Historical Society now. We unfortunately don't have the funds to do that, as awesome as that would be. We're trying to preserve the history of them, like the memory of them. We have a large archival collection of photographs, some theaters that are still around, some that are gone, documents, some artifacts, and it's really about celebrating the American theaters.
Do you have a website? We got to kind of wrap this up, man. Do you have a website that you want to tell people about?
I do. My website is afterthefinalcurtain.net. It's updated about every 2 weeks with posts on new theaters, places I'm going to be, like live events. I do photo workshops in some old theaters. And I have an Instagram, which is also After the Final Curtain, and a website, or a Facebook page, which is Facebook After the Final Curtain.
Well, thanks so much for coming on. This was a lot of fun. Best of luck with everything you're doing, and I hope to see that people do take an interest and try to restore the theaters back. I appreciate what the Chinese did, turning it into a dim sum restaurant, but it doesn't quite take it back to whatever you know what I mean. It's sort of, you can look at it 2 ways. You can look at, okay, this is progress, and they didn't waste the building, but a dim sum restaurant isn't quite the same thing as the grand old theater. But maybe there's no place in society for those anymore, really. I don't know.
Well, a lot of them are turned into performing arts centers, but yeah, and not to keep going after we have to wrap up, but there was a theater in every town. There were 10 on every main street in big cities, and you really can't have that many performing arts centers around. But what the dim sum place is called adaptive reuse, which is taking the old structure and turning it into something new. And I believe that there's a lot of different uses. I've seen theaters turn into bookstores. I've seen them turned into warehouses, which isn't as great. Roller skating rinks.
Yeah, that's an idea.
There's a lot of different uses. In the UK, there's it's basically like art. It would be if TGI Fridays did this. It's called Weatherspoons, and they just buy up old theaters and level the floor and put their restaurant right in them. Leave the architecture on the top. And they've done that to quite a few. When I was last over there, I think I went to about 6 or 7.
Well, I suppose it's better than just turning it into a parking lot.
Exactly. I mean, that has happened too. There's the Michigan Theater in Detroit, which is literally a parking garage. They left the ceiling of the theater and just hollowed it out and turned it into a parking garage.
That was a Joni Mitchell song a long time ago, too.
Right.
The Paradise turned into a parking lot. All right, Matt.
Exactly.
Well, take care. Thank you again for coming on.
Thank you.
You're listening to Mr. Smooth and Savvy right here on the Douglas Coleman Show. We'll be right back after these commercial messages.
Hi there, this is Stuart Epps, record producer. This is my story about Elton John, working with him in those early years, going back to 1967 at Dick James, all the amazing tours, those first recordings, going through to Rocket Records, and it's an amazing story about his incredible rise to stardom and my part in that. So look forward to taking you on that journey. So here we go. Yeah, and to order this great audio CD, please just email me at stuartepps@talk21.com. That's Stuart, Stuart, Epps, EPPS, at talk, TALK, 21 in figures.com. Stuart Epps at talk21.com. Email me and I'll give you all the details for buying this brilliant audio disc. Thank you. Bye.
DJC Music and DJC Productions are pleased to announce a brand new website. We have started a listing website for radio show hosts as well as potential show guests. This is a meeting site where hosts and guests can come together. Show hosts can list their show and types of guests they're interested in booking. Potential guests can list their talents, bio, accomplishments, or anything they feel makes them an interesting radio show guest. There are no recurrent payments, only a one-time $5 listing fee. Your listing will stay up until you decide to cancel. Previous guests of The Douglas Coleman Show are welcome to submit their guest listing free of charge. Go to radiohostsandguests.com. That's radiohostsandguests.com.
Tired of living in a culture of lies, fake news, and alternative facts? The Pro-Truth Pledge reverses the tide of lies by calling on politicians, and everyone else, to commit to truth-oriented behaviors. The pledge asks signees to commit to 12 behaviors that research in behavioral science shows lead to truthfulness, such as clarifying one's opinions and the facts, citing one's sources, and celebrating people who update their beliefs toward the truth. Private citizens who sign the pledge get the benefit of contributing to a more truth-oriented society. Public figures get more substantive rewards for signing the pledge in the form of positive media and public recognition. The pledge crowdsources the truth by asking volunteers to evaluate the statements of public figures who sign the pledge. Take the pledge, demand that your elected representatives do so, and encourage your friends to take it at protruthpledge.org.
The Douglas Coleman Show is now offering a complete radio promotional package for music artists. Your track will air 28 times a week for 1 month over all of our online and terrestrial platforms. as well as permanently archive on Spreaker, iTunes and many other sites. Your profile will also be featured in our featured music artists page on our website. With this package, you will also get a 15-minute interview on our show to promote your latest single, EP, LP or upcoming gig. Similar packages like this can run hundreds of dollars and often are subscription-based. Our package has a one-time fee of just $49.99. Please go to douglascolemanmusic.com/CRPP. That's douglascolemanmusic.com/CRPP for complete details. Let's work together to get your music heard.
Are you an independent musician? How would you like to have your songs played on hundreds of radio stations just like the one you're listening to right now? Join MusicSubmit.com and we'll promote your music to radio stations and blogs in your genre. It's free to set up your account, and we guarantee your music will be considered for airplay by radio stations worldwide. Why not sign up today? It's free. MusicSubmit.com. Radio promotion for indie musicians.
When I see the way she looks at him, hurts so bad, you know it's such a sin to see her loving. Well, I just walk on by. Nobody knows what it does to me. Nobody knows. No one could ever see. Nobody knows what it does to me. Now those tender looks upon her face are meant for someone else who's in my place, and he's a lover the way I used to be. Nobody knows what it does to me. Nobody knows. No one could ever see. Nobody knows what it does to me. I can see her dancing with someone else, holding him so close while I'm by myself. I just wanna hit him, but that won't do. All I know is I've got to find some way I can get to you. When I see the way she holds his hand, it burns inside me. I can't understand how could she love him the way she once loved me. Nobody knows what it does to me. Nobody knows. No one could ever see. Nobody knows what it does to me. Nobody knows what it does to me. Nobody knows. No one could ever see. Nobody knows what it does to me. Nobody knows. Yeah.
Okay, please welcome to the Douglas Coleman Show, Bill March. Hey, Bill, how are you?
Hello, Douglas. How are you?
Doing just fine. Thank you very much. You were a participant in our complete radio promotional package. We ran your track Nobody Knows for 4 weeks. Thank you very much for signing up. And this is your interview portion of that package that you signed up for. So we're going to find out a little bit about you and see what makes Bill March tick. Why don't you just give us your background a bit? Tell us about yourself and what you've been doing, and then we can talk a little bit about your track.
Yeah, I'm a musician from Cleveland, Ohio. Been playing around Cleveland, Ohio for the last, about 400 years. And did a lot of, back in the 80s, was with a group called Boku that for a couple of records. We never made the top 40, but we did crack the top 100 on Billboard, a couple songs. And so I've been just basically working around the Cleveland area pretty much my whole life, and playing in bands, doing all the the live scene. Got back into recording my own music about 4 or 5 years ago. Just decided that I I want to make sure that I'm recording my music again and not just playing in bars or weddings or whatever you do when you play music.
So you are a working musician then, right? You do weddings and you do bars, you do cover stuff, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, I've done all that stuff.
But you write as
well. Not so much
well.
into weddings anymore.
Yeah, weddings are kind of interesting. So you write your own stuff as well, I assume, yeah?
Yeah, I record a combination of my own stuff and covers of tunes by artists that I always like. I try to go a little deeper into their catalog, so it's not, I did a Raspberries tune, but I wouldn't go all the way. I did something that a tune of theirs that I like called Nobody Knows.
Oh, okay. That was the one we played, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay, I did not know that was a Raspberries tune. I thought that was your composition. See?
I grew up with those guys. I kind of grew up, the Eric Carmen and the whole band, they're from Cleveland, and they're from my area town, in fact. And I've worked with them on and off, the guitar player, especially Wally Bryson. And in fact, tonight for this John Lennon birthday benefit, I'm actually going to play with their drummer, Jim Bonfanti. Dropping a few names there.
Yeah, well, you just reminded me, today is John Lennon's birthday, huh?
Yes, it is.
Wow. Yeah, and it didn't click in my head until you said that.
Every year I take part in a benefit. It's for some type of charity. And I always I play with a group, but then I do a couple tunes solo. And I'm going to do I'm Only Sleeping and Rain this evening.
Oh, great songs. Yeah.
Yeah.
God, John would be 79 years old if he were still with us. I can't picture him. I can't picture him other than having very short hair, his little round glasses, and looking something like Eric Clapton. That's kind of just my picture in my mind of what he would look like.
Gray hair. White hair.
White hair, yeah. Maybe he'd have, big hair. I don't know. Because he changed his look so frequently. You take a look at him from 1964 and then through 68. And through the 70s, he had everything from hair down to his shoulders and a full beard to a buzz cut to everything in between,
Yep, he sure did.
I think he had the good hair gene, so I don't imagine he would be bald. As a matter of fact, all of the Beatles, I was just going to say, all of the Beatles had good hair and still do. I mean, Paul still has all his hair too, so... Yeah,
if you're going to invent long hair, if you're going to spring long hair on the world, you better find a way to keep it.
Yeah, that would really suck if they all went bald. They would just totally blow the image. Yeah, although that was the rumor, anyways. When they came to America, everybody thought they were wearing wigs. That they were actually bald to begin with, and that was kind of a funny story. But no.
I had a Beatle wig.
Oh, did you really?
I did. Everyone did.
Well, are you and I around the same age? I'm 58 next year.
Just about the same age, yep.
Okay. So we were kind of the kids when the Beatles were around, and then teenagers on the second wave. There's been so many waves of the Beatles, because in the 70s, even though the Beatles were gone, there was this whole second wave of Beatle fans for kids that were who had older brothers and sisters who were teenagers during the Beatles, and it just continued and continued.
Well, they put out the red and blue greatest hits packages in the early 70s. I think that turned a new generation on to them.
Oh, I remember those.
In the 80s, they came out. They put them out on CD. I think that helped, and it seems like every decade they do something with the catalog to make sure that people remember them, which I think is a good thing.
Well, it's certainly smart marketing.
Yep.
I don't think I've ever seen another band do something quite like that. Zeppelin did one sort of box set, didn't they? I don't remember any more than that.
So. Yeah. They're back in the 90s. Everyone was putting out box sets. Yeah, they were part of that.
And then I guess the latest one was the White Album that just came out with all kinds of stuff. I haven't bought it, but
Actually, Abbey Road, the 50th anniversary of Abbey Road just came out too. But yeah, that's what they're doing now, the 50th anniversary editions of like Sgt. Pepper and the White Album and now Abbey Road.
I got into the conversation with a band, two members of a band called Abley House, who do videos on YouTube. They're kind of instructional videos for other musicians on how to play Beatles songs, because there's a lot of a lot of tricky parts in Beatles songs that you might not pick up. Guitar licks and bass lines and things, very intricate. And they show just their hands and give kind of instructions on how to play the chords. Anyways, we were talking about Beatles in general, and I still like listening to the Beatles on vinyl. On CD, their music just doesn't sound as good.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I would agree with that.
It's certainly more convenient to have all the Beatles songs on my phone, but if I really want to listen to one, I don't know, you got to get the vinyl out, because the Beatles music was recorded in that manner, and I think something strange happened to it when they digitized it.
Right, some things weren't really meant to be heard in the mix. It was part of the mix, more to just as everything is really out front now. Yeah, you can hear everything, which sometimes is good, sometimes it isn't. But yeah, that's true.
So, tell me about your process. You've kind of seen, since if you and I are around the same age, you've gone through the whole gamut of the wild transitions in the music industry. So when you write a song or when you record, are you more traditional or are you more modern? In other words, I know people that are in their 20s now who have a certain way that they record. Not every single one, but most of them. They start with a click track or they start with the rhythm track. And for me, that's impossible. For me, I start with a pad of paper and go sit at the piano and come up with a tune.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
I mean that's what I do. I would be afraid to go into a studio without having done that first.
I mean, the rhythm track was always last for me, and now the younger kids, they're doing it first. They put that down first and then do the guitar riffs over it.
They're looking for a beat that they can play. Yeah, I don't work like that. No, I'm old school.
So your process is you play guitar, right?
Really a bass player, but play a little bit of guitar.
Okay.
Mostly bass.
So what do you write on?
Acoustic guitar or piano.
Do you get the words and the music all at the same time, or do you write lyrics first, or what is your process?
You get a little bit of both. You get a little bit of both. Always get the music done first and then go back and refine the lyric. Lyric takes forever. It just takes forever, Douglas.
What is your stronger suit? Is it music or lyrics?
Probably music, but I work hard on the lyrics. I spent the whole summer working on a lyric that I'm almost done with. So I got to say the lyrics are good. I mean, I don't write just anything. So yeah, I try to make them both, just like the Beatles did. I try to make them as good, everything as good as it can be.
Are you able to just sit down and say, okay, I'm going to write a song starting now? Or does something have to hit you and go ding, and then you got to rush to grab your guitar and get it down before you forget it?
It never happens for me that way, but usually I'll just pick up a guitar or I'll be sitting at the piano and I'm just noodling basically, and something will strike me, just a little, even if it's just like an opening phrase, and that's it, and then you may not get anything else the rest of that day, you know what I mean? So no, I nothing ever comes to me as a whole. Very, very, very seldomly, maybe a couple times, but for the most part, it's just fooling around, noodling around on your guitar or your piano, and all of a sudden something hits you. It just comes out of you, and you say, hey, I kind of like that. And you hope that in the old days, when you didn't have like a computer you could record into, or even a cassette deck, the way you knew that it was good is if you remembered it the next day.
Well, it's true. For me, the last two songs I wrote came to me while I was driving, which is really inconvenient. But I rarely am able to just sit down at the piano and say, okay, I'm going to write a song. The only time I've ever been able to do that is if I had like all the lyrics written out already. You know, like if I was just sitting a week ago or something and I was, okay, these are cool lyrics, and write them all out and then take that piece of paper and stick it on the piano and then say, okay, now I got to find a tune for this.
Yeah.
But, you know, that I can do.
That's great that you could do that. I've never been able to write a lyric before writing music. People do it different ways, and it all works. It all works. Whatever works for you.
The only thing I can't do, like I said, is sit down cold with no lyrics, no tune, nothing, and hope something comes while I'm sitting there. That just doesn't work for me. You know, but
no, I never sit down with the. I always sit down with the idea like, oh, maybe something will hit me. I don't sit down and say I'm going to write a song today. I just sit down and just play a little bit and just hope that maybe something will come. And a lot of times nothing comes. In fact, you know, it's not that often. You know, that's the trick about it. That's what makes it magic, really, is that it doesn't happen all the time.
Well, you got to give credit to those guys, the Tin Pan Alley guys, who approach songwriting as a 9-to-5 job, and they would just go into an office and sit there all day and write songs. I mean, that just is inconceivable to me, to be able to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they're gifted. A lot of times there's more than one person working too. And if you have a lyricist that you're working with, maybe they're getting inspired, and that in turn inspires you. You know, but I get what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I've never tried to even attempt to do that.
Well, you do bring up a good point, because there was a whole room full of people, and come to think of it, when you look at some of those songs that were written back then, some of them had like 4 and 5 songwriters in the credits.
Yep.
So it's quite possible somebody would throw something out and then somebody would throw something back at you, and that's a good way to write. To write alone there's more of a challenge, I think, to doing it. Maybe not for everybody.
I've always written alone. Never been able to find a collaborator. Wish I could.
Well, it's not.
What are you doing next week?
It's not always that easy, because the problem. Now, I've worked with other people before, and sometimes if you have a really good relationship with somebody, it can work. But the one problem that I always had was you had to divvy it up. Like you say, okay, I'm going to write the lyrics, you write the melody, or the other way around. When you started to dissect the song or piece it together little by little with somebody else, you never quite get the song that you were thinking of, because they'll add something. You know what I mean? It's like making soup.
Oh, sure.
And you got 2 guys that are throwing in this spice and this spice and this, and by the time you're done, it tastes nothing like what you thought, when you started out. So I always found that didn't work so well. But what has worked for me in the past is if somebody sent me music, I could write lyrics and a tune to it. Or if somebody sent me some lyrics, then I could make...
Yeah, I mean, I've worked like that a couple times, mainly with just lyrics. But the melody was already there, but they would just need help with the lyrics. So I have collaborated a little bit like that. But all my own songs I've always just worked alone. It'd be great. I'd welcome the chance to work with someone. It's just not that easy to find, people that are on the same wavelength as you.
So what are you working on now? What's your latest project?
I'm working on a couple new songs in the studio. One is actually believe it or not, a hip hop. I have a hip hop beat of a song. I did a hip hop version of a song I just finished. For some reason, I heard this tune as a hip hop thing, so we went in and actually did build a beat for it, but the song was already written. So working on that, working on some other things. I usually try to do a couple covers that I like. I'm thinking about doing an Elvis Costello tune called Brilliant Mistake.
I never heard of that one.
Well, that's the whole idea.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring it spring it on the world, and then you'll know about it.
Oh, well, great. Do you have any issues of copyright licensing or anything if you record someone else's song?
I always pay for a license.
Oh, well, that's good.
I always go. I've never recorded a cover without getting the license.
Are they expensive?
No, not really. Especially, I suppose it'd be expensive if you're selling millions of downloads and CDs, but it's very affordable.
Or unless it was the Beatles, because I've heard that to get a license for a Beatles song is like $250,000 if they'll give it to you.
Well, no, I wouldn't. I don't think I'd ever cover a Beatles tune. They're just too. All that music is just too. It's too prevalent. I try to go for stuff by artists that, like I did a Moody Blues tune called "It's Up to You." Everyone's heard of the Moody Blues, but has everyone heard of "It's Up to You"? Well, maybe you have. I don't know. But
no.
I try to go after tunes that aren't as they're deeper into their catalog.
Okay. Well, Bill, we got to kind of wrap this up. Give us your website so people can come check you out.
It's billmarch-music.com.
All right, super. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for signing up for the radio promo. If you get a new song, we'll be happy to do the promo for you again.
Sounds good.
All right, take care, Bill.
Thank you.
Well, that's about all the time we've got for the show today. I want to thank my special guests, Matt Lambros and Bill March. Thank you very much. Also, thank you to George Hendrickson for his music. This is Douglas Coleman saying I'll see you later.